Welcome back to another exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV. I'm your host, Gary Malevsky, and the publisher of Cyber Defense Magazine. Sitting in my hot seat today, all the way from the West Coast, Piyush Pandey is the CEO of Appsian, Appsian. Now you're wondering, is this an important area in cybersecurity? Let me tell you how critical it is. Most of the largest companies and some government organizations around the world use ERP to manage a lot of the things they do every day. ERP platforms like Oracle, PeopleSoft, and others, they need to be secure, and they normally aren't by default. So Piyush, welcome, and tell me what you do and how you do it.
Absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be part of your show. And what we do fundamentally is most of the large enterprises, including governments, state governments, federal governments across the globe, and some of the largest global organizations, have something called ERP applications, which help them manage the HR, the financial systems, the manufacturing systems, and some of the critical company sensitive information is stored in these applications. And 70% of these applications across the globe are managed by two of the large vendors in the ERP market, which is SAP and Oracle. Now, these applications were built a couple of decades ago, and they don't have integral control to support the kind of access level people have, where people access this from everywhere, especially after COVID. And when you do that, there are a lot of security threats and vulnerabilities which these applications have, just because of the reason, because they were not designed to be accessed from iPhone, from all the time, from different locations. This creates an opportunity for hackers to hack into these systems and obtain sensitive information, whether it's sensitive financial information, personal information about people, or especially sensitive information about organization, whether it's government or a financial institution. So our goal is to develop a security platform which gives them a comprehensive data security solution to protect the sensitive information from inside. Even if somebody hacks into the system, we can look at what's happening. Is it in line with how these applications are supposed to be used? And if there's an anomaly, we can stop the transaction, we can track it, and let the people know that this is an anomaly, this shouldn't be happening. So it's a policy-based, contextual, real-time security to secure some of the most sensitive informations most of the large organizations, including government, might have.
Now, I've heard of things like RBAC, role-based access control, user behavioral anomaly detection. There's all these acronyms for things we do, MFA, multi-factor auth. If you just start at the center of the layer and you work your way out, we've got a database. It's got critical company data. It could be the data of people who are working on missiles, or they're working on the next B-2 bomber, or they're writing the next Coca-Cola recipe for the new formula. So it's company assets that are critical, are at the core of this ERP system. It's important internal confidential data, and wrapped around that are these systems. The ERP systems allow us to manage and manipulate data and to do our work and to run our business and to do planning. And that's what ERP is all about. But again, they weren't designed for security. Are you adding intrusion prevention and multi-factor auth? And are you like building the layer after layer of the onion so it's a strong, secure ERP system? And how do you get injected into their environment to do that?
Sure, that's a wonderful question. So the way we think about it, whether you take intrusion detection or some compliance or insider threats, is there are multiple ways people secure these applications or even other applications. One is you have a single sign-on or a multi-factor authentication. So every time somebody comes in, they have to go through that authentication. I see them as you create a wall where you have to go through the entry door, you have to show your ID, and that's how you go in. Now, the systems are more complex and there are vulnerabilities all around. Sometimes you'll find people can go around those systems which are built outside. So what we can do is, we think about it, if you're going into a castle, there is a front door, which is what traditional ID security firms do. But a lot of times hacker can go around it, whether they directly go to database or they get into these applications. The way we think about it, we protect the data which is residing inside. So we are not the lock at the front door. We provide different level of security, access management through multi-factor authentication, or masking sensitive information like the bill of material for missiles, or who can access to different sensitive information, or who can approve POs, which are buying sensitive information, which might mean that we are buying rockets from somewhere and they're being shipped. So we can protect the sensitive information from inside. So it doesn't matter it's being accessed from somebody who's coming from the outside hacker, or there might be an insider threat. If somebody's access level or their login has been compromised, which can be a senior person or a privileged user, we can make sure that even a privileged user, like a CFO organization, air marshal, if their credentials are compromised, if they access something from a location which is an anomaly, from at a time at 2 a.m. they're accessing something or approving something, we can stop the transaction, not just based on who is accessing, but what are they accessing, in which transaction are they accessing, what is the location, how many times are they accessing. So we combine a lot of information, put that intelligence together, and figure out whether they should be able to access that sensitive information or approve something which is super critical for the organization and protect it from the inside. So it's like putting the brains behind the traditional security tools companies, organization, government might have.
So at that castle, they parachute in from above. They skip the moat and the front gates, and you're already protecting the crown jewels in the center of the castle. You notice they're coming in with a parachute, so you're the next generation of security, and you're looking up when everyone's looking straight ahead. So you've built this multi-layered approach to ERP defense that the vendors who created these platforms, they were really thinking about making jobs easy for people. They weren't thinking about security when they built their systems.
That's absolutely right. These applications were built to increase the functionality, and people are able to get more value out of the sensitive information and the business processes. Our job is to keep that functionality and make these applications ubiquitous. That means people can use it anywhere, all the time, while protecting the sensitive information, keeping the structure of the castle together, have a layered structure where you can monitor, you can have the regular compliance as things becomes more important, while using the application to the fullest.
Piyush, do you have a connector or an API or an interface to Seams and SIMS? Are you the kind of the security dashboard for SAP, or do you output to that part of the company so that they'll get an alert in their or their SOAR to help deal with a critical flaw or an attack that you noticed?
Actually, that's a great question. We do both of that. We collect sensitive information along with the context of why they are being accessed. We combine that information with something like what is the location where it's accessed from, how many times has it been accessed, and create dashboards which is essentially meaningful information or give some insights about why is this transaction or this piece of information being accessed. And then we can upload this either in our tool, which customer can use, or depending on what SIM they use, we can upload the data in that SIM where it can be presented in a dashboard or a report based on the practice that company might have.
I have a feeling there's two new kind of attack vectors lately since COVID. We've got a lot of executives working from home with poor hygiene computers. So is there something where their access to the ERP solution is even more risky remotely? And are you seeing exploits against them because the bad guys see the shift from 2% working at home before COVID to over 52, 53% working from home?
It is. There are classic examples which have been there before. I'll give you a simple example and more complex. Simple example is somebody who's processing the payroll information for say 20,000 people in a government organization or a state organization. Now they have always done this by being in office. Because of COVID, they do this at home, and they probably download payroll information, which can include social security number, their bank account, their salary, into a file on their computer. First of all, that information can be leaked if their account is hacked. The other thing is, while they're processing this, uploading and downloading, somebody can access and monitor that information. So we have seen situations where thousands of people's sensitive information can be leaked while you're doing your regular job, but you're doing it from home, which is not as secure as what is being done. So that's one scenario where we can protect, mask that information, or make sure you only download the information which is relevant to you. If you're only processing X amount of dollar, just process that, everything is blocked. Same thing can happen if the CFO is approving something from home, is they only see very specific information. Or you're approving a purchase of a missile, then everything is masked. You're only doing what you're allowed to do at that specific time, so that people who are sitting in your apartment building don't get to know what is being approved in a defense deal.
I have a feeling that you're also defending against one of the oldest methods of exploit, the phishing attacks, where someone gets phished, they get infected, and they don't mean to be a malicious insider. They don't mean to misbehave on their computer. It may be, like you say, the hacker at 2 a.m. using a remote access Trojan. Would you be able to notice that bad behavior happening on Jane's computer while she's away, or in the background on her computer off screen, so she doesn't notice that there's some malicious activity because she fell for a phishing attack?
Yep, that's one of the very regular use case for us, where you'll get an email from HR that reset your password. It has been 2 months since you reset the password. You reset the password, the password is gone to a phishing attack, and they go change your payroll information. When you get the payroll, it goes to a different bank, and the next day the bank account is changed again on payroll. You will not know where the money went, and you'll go to HR and say, I didn't get the payroll this time. And they'll say, what happened? Money's gone somewhere, you can't do anything. This is a classic example which happens with a lot of companies currently in United States. And the way we solve this problem is we keep track of when is payroll information changed. You can send a notification. We can actually make it, you have to approve this before this happens. And we can also see if there are 5 bank account information being changed in 5 minutes, then there's a phishing attack happening. This is a very common way, and the regular employees of any organization fall for this phishing attack, which is very common, and people don't even find out that something like this happened.
Now, I have a feeling you're dealing with really large organizations with Appsian. And so I'm curious, is the deployment a day, a week, a month? How quickly can you be deployed and start protecting these companies and their critically weak ERP systems?
Typically, it depends on the size and process of the organization. We have seen implementation which have completed in 1 or 2 weeks, and we have seen situations where it takes almost 6 months, depending on the complexity of the implementation and what is the testing process. So our software is a very turnkey solution which can be implemented in a few days of effort. But most of the time these organizations take is, once you implement this solution, they have to test it thoroughly so that it passes their security requirements, their functional requirements. But typically it will take anything from 2 weeks to a couple of months to implement these solutions.
Sounds great. Is there anything you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners that we haven't covered yet?
I think one of the key things which I want people to encourage and think about is the world is changing a lot. Whether you're a government organization, state organization, defense organization, or a general commercial organization who's a bank, is how people consume data, and these applications is changing a lot. People expect these core ERP applications which have a lot of sensitive information about their company, about employees' personal information, to be accessed as if they are accessing Yelp from everywhere, all the time, from any device. Now, our job is to make sure companies are able to provide that level of access, but strengthen the ERP application from inside and have a risk management solution which not only gives access capability to everybody, but you manage the risk, compliance, and visibility within these solutions from inside. So you have to think ahead, what's going to happen 5 years from now, and how do I strengthen my systems to control and manage sensitive information from inside. So as people think about it more broadly, they'll find more use cases in technology like Appsians and some of the other security vendors, which provide a fundamental data security solution to strengthen their risk management portfolio. So I will encourage more and more companies to do that, think about it, and make a 2, 3, 4, 5-year plan as they open up these systems.
Sounds wonderful. Piyush Pandey, the CEO of Appsian, APPSIAN.com, Appsian. You have made it through my hot seat. I really enjoyed our interview together. And what I learned from you today is that we really have to manage the risk from the inside out on our ERP systems. We have to start now. I would assume we're already at risk of being breached today, not wait for a month or a year, and harden up our systems, especially because the ERP solutions could lose an entire payroll. There's so many we could lose all of our critical records. There's so much that could be lost without Appsian protecting us. And I just want to thank you again. Wonderful interview. And folks, come back next time for another exciting episode of Cyber Defense TV.
Thanks for having me here.